Welcome, guys. I'm very happy to get you on this new podcast. Here we invite ambitious, curious dropouts, rebel, outsider. We discuss their journey to find themselves, to build, to create, to grow. Today we welcome Abhijeet. He contacted me on LinkedIn and we got in touch and we started discussing together. He's a very ambitious and very successful tech entrepreneur, dropout tech entrepreneur. He started developing mobile game and a game in general when he was a student, and he decided to drop out to go all in. I think he got like around 350 million downloads on his game, so it's going to be pretty interesting to discover like his journey, his learning, etc. Welcome, Abhijeet. How are you?
I'm happy to be here. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm very happy to get you here. For the people who don't know you, who didn't follow you on social, can you maybe introduce yourself like in 1 minute?
Sure. I'm the founder of RedLine Games. We have been developing mobile games since 2017. We have published a couple of games during the years. The most number of downloads that we have amassed so far is 350 million downloads. Two of our biggest games is Ice Cream Inc. and Attack Hole. Attack Hole became the top game in USA in 2023. It was also the most downloaded game in the first quarter of 2023.
What age did you start making your first game?
I started by modding games. So when I initially started, I used to make game mods and like add-ons for games. And I started around 16, I believe, 15, 16. And I actually started building games when I was around 19, 20.
Okay, so right now you have 26, you have Dropouts, you have a very flourish company with thousands and millions of downloads. How it feel? Like, it was easy to go from zero to now? It was difficult? How you feel right now?
One thing I would say is I don't really feel anything special. I'm definitely grateful of the things that I have now. I definitely have a lot of more resources, but I still feel the same. Still trying to chase much bigger games, still trying to make much bigger games. I would say it's still the same.
Okay, you're still angry, you still want to feed yourself, but you want maybe to go on bigger and bigger league as time goes. Okay, and I want to talk about like your childhood. What kind of childhood you got and who was like the little Abhijeet?
Interesting question. So it kind of changed. When I was very young, I believe in like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I was definitely not the most good student. I would just study just before the exams and still get like decent grades. I'm not really proud, but maybe I was a bit of a bully. Not the best in the school, like I said. But then from 9th, 10th grade onwards, things started to shift a bit. I was much more focused in computers. I was much more focused and interested in games and understanding how these things worked. I was very business oriented since the very young age. So in my house, my mom used to say, okay, if you want a toy, you need to do something in return, right? Like whether that was like helping my mom with some household chores. So that just made me think, okay, if I want something, I have to work for it. It's just not, I can just demand it and I will get that. So based on that just was inbuilt within me. So when I started building games, I started making add-ons, playing games, I always thought of, okay, how can I profit from this? How can I maybe market this, sell this, etc. That's how I started. So 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade was actually when I started building like game mods and then started putting them online for free, completely for free in the beginning. And I had zero expectations. I did not really think, okay, I will make millions of dollars selling this. I just started doing that. And the result of this was because I was so enveloped in like computers and everything, my outgoing activities were very minimal. So I won't really talk to a lot of my friends, go out a lot. Even my studies were struggling a bit. So after my 10th, I decided to take biology. I was a biology student in my 11th and 12th, and my studies were really struggling. I was not able to score anything in my school because all the time I spent was checking out games, decompiling, etc. So that would be the quick recap.
And so like when you started being interested around like computer stuff, game stuff, did you got any friends from the real world where you could discuss about this and you can challenge yourself?
Yeah, I definitely had some friends, but those were the ones that I made online. So once I started, I used to play a lot of PC games. Then I found out GTA Vice City, and then I found out, okay, there are cheat codes in GTA Vice City. So I developed this habit of using cheat codes in all the games. And then when I switched to online games, like when Facebook was becoming popular in 2006-07, I started playing Farmville and all these games. And then I found out, okay, there are no cheat codes for online games. So that's when I decided, okay, let me check online, see what others are doing, how these games are made. And then I started browsing Flash game forums, online communities. I was really interested in how the games work. I did make some friends online, and I was able to learn a lot more from those online friends. I did not necessarily have any friends in my school or real world, as in like in my friend circle or anyone around me.
So basically, you got this passion, this conviction around like games and what you could do inside it, and you wanted to grow in this industry. You wanted to become better in this industry. It was your thing, and you started joining forums, joining communities, and surround yourself by experts and players of this industry. And do you think this was like something that helped you grow and that was a game changer for you?
Now that I look back, I think so, yeah. Back then, I didn't really think in these terms. I did not even think, okay, I need to grow, I need to be in a circle where everyone knows this and this and that. Back then, I was just interested in it, and I just Googled forums. I liked the topics that they were discussing. I just joined them, but yeah, I definitely learned things from other people that I was able to build upon after that. Joining communities definitely played a big role, yeah.
Yeah, I think like being in school for me as Dropout 2, like the main frustration was that I was addicted to few subjects, and it was difficult for me in the school to get with people who have the same subject and same obsession. So I wanted to get out of this, to be surrounded by this kind of people. It meant that I had friends in school, in education, in university, etc. But it wasn't the friends that we were discussing my obsession subject. And so at this point, that's created the frustration, and that drove me drop out. And I think for lots of people that I've talked to, it's one of the reasons they decided to drop out at some point, because they wasn't a world where they could be surrounded by people who have the same obsession and interest for this kind of thing, you know?
I wouldn't say that was the same reason for me, but I totally understand the point.
And what was the reason for you at this point to say like, okay, school is not maybe gonna make me win with this game, with what I want to do, and I have to drop out?
For my case, I would say it was more like an accidental dropout. So I was studying, but my grades were like really struggling, and my family was very worried about me. They said, okay, you have a business, you're making good money, but right now you don't know how to make your own games, you're not working on your own games, and you're modding other games. What if the other games stop working? So that was the thing. And this was also the part where I thought, okay, if it was your own game, then it would make more sense. And this was my driving factor of thinking in that direction, that, okay, I should start building my own games. This is what propelled me into building my own games. But around that time, as I said, my grades were struggling. So my dad said, in my 12th grade, take a drop this year. Because if you give your exam once, you cannot give it again. And once you have bad grades, it will affect your career in the future in India. So I was like, okay, let me take a drop this year, reappear to my exams next year. That year never came. So after I took my drop, I made like $500,000. I was pretty satisfied with how things were going. I actually joined a company called Soho Corp because I wanted to see. So up until then, I was working solo. I was making money, but I did not know how other people worked, how companies work, how teams work. So that's why I decided to join a company where I would be in that environment, even though I was making $100 a month back then.
You wanted to join, to experiment and see like how it looks like to work with other people, basically.
Yeah, so that company was paying me $100 a month while I was making $40,000 a month from my own business, doing this at the same time. But I still joined that company because I wanted to really see how things work, how companies work. I would be well prepared for my future when I start my own company. I wouldn't say I dropped out because I did not find people of my similar interests, which I did not, but I still wanted to study, but I couldn't find the time. I was too engulfed softwares, yeah.
So in your case, it was more a question of focus and being able to make an all-in. Okay. And you mentioned your father. We're here to discuss with you about this. It's pretty cool. Like for family, it's pretty difficult sometimes to accept this because in a lot of society, in a lot of country, education is seen as knowledge, is seen as power. And if you're not going in education, you basically throw your chance to get power. It's mostly the case in some type of country. I know that in India, it's even more difficult than, for example, in France or in USA. How did you manage to explain to your family like that you wanted to chase this because it was real and that you have a precise plan maybe? Like, how did you manage to explain it and to make it understand for them?
It's very easy to figure out now in the hindsight, but like my previous stories, I did not really think much at that time. I was just doing what I wanted. Even though my parents were saying, okay, don't do this, focus on your studies, I was just doing what I wanted to do. And eventually I just proved myself because I wasn't sure if what I was doing was right or not, but I was dedicated. I knew that I liked this and I'm doing this because I want to do this. And eventually I was able to prove myself. In my 10th grade, I made like $11,000 in 1 year. And my parents were like, okay, this is okay money, but you still need to study. $10,000, $11,000 is nothing. So next year I made $22,000, which basically doubled the amount. So even then they were like, okay, this is doing fine. But if this thing shuts down, what do you do then? You still need to have a degree and have a backup plan. This continued till my 12th grade. Eventually I took a drop. That's when I was fully able to focus on my business and exponentially grow it. So it went from $22,000 a year to $40,000 a month. And this was what convinced them to do a point. But okay, even if I don't study, I will figure out something. So after that, they were like very, very chill.
So you got the traction, and the traction helped you for your side being sure about it, and for your network, your family, and for your friends also understand a bit better.
Yeah.
And do you think you would drop out if you didn't got this traction? If you got like only like 5,000 a year or something like this?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I personally never planned on dropping out. The only reason I dropped out was my dad said, okay, drop out, give the exam next year. Or else I was planning on giving my exams and seeing how things go. Back then, nothing was planned. Only thing I knew was, okay, I like doing this, and I kept doing that. I was not thinking about anything else.
And so what is the life after you dropped out and you joined this company to discover the process, and outside you develop your business? What's happened to you?
So in this company, I was still making a lot of money, but I still lived very, very frugal life. I did not even have my own car, my own house up until this year. I bought a car this year, like 6 months ago. So I still live with my parents. I still drove around in my parents' car. I lived a very frugal life, even though I was making $40,000 a year when I was like 20. In my office, I was getting $100 a month to work there. We worked on games over there as well. The main reason, like I said, was to learn how teams work. And so I would work in that company from like 10, 11 a.m. till 6 p.m. And after that 6 p.m., I would start, building my own games. So I would start working, and I would work till 3, 4 a.m. at night. And after that, I would go home, sleep, and then come back to the office next day. So I kept doing this for 1.5 years while I was working in that company. I worked there for 1.5 years before leaving the company. During that time, I published 3 games. All 3 of them were puzzle games. So I published it with a Canadian publisher, and all of them got featured on Apple Play Store. So the games did well, but yeah, that's how I worked. So during the daytime, I worked in the office. From the evening onwards, I worked on my own games till I couldn't continue working, because I would work till 3 or 4. After that, it would be very, very difficult to continue working because I would get super sleepy. So I would go home, sleep around 11 a.m. and then continue working in the office.
The first games you did during this time was like puzzle game. Why puzzle game? You were alone, or you were working with others? How it worked?
Yeah, good question. The main reason for doing puzzle games was I was kind of inspired by the indie games during that time. A lot of indie Steam games, indie mobile games that I saw were puzzle games. Some of them also came from India, which were a bit inspiring. They were doing well. They were covered by a lot of blogs and big mediums. So that really inspired me to build similar puzzle games. That was the main reason for building a puzzle game. Back then I was working solo. So I worked solo till 2019. I joined the company in 2016, and I was working solo till 2019.
The puzzle game, you told me you were working with a Canadian publisher. You were basically creating the concept, developing the game, and it was helping you distribute it, or how it worked?
How it worked was, I built the game, I built everything in it, and then I pitched my game to a couple of publishers. Usually the publishers would help me with user acquisition, monetization, marketing the game, distributing the game, like you said. So I pitched the game to a couple of publishers. Some of them said, okay, look, this game doesn't look nice. Some of them did not even reply to me. But then one of them said, okay, and this is the first game that I made. No, actually the second game that I made. First game that I made, nobody replied. So second game I sent to even more publishers, and then one of them was a publisher called Galactic Thumb from Canada. These guys said, okay, look, we like the game. I think there is potential, but a lot of things are wrong in the game and they have to change. So I worked with them. They gave a lot of feedback on the game and we improved the game. Actually, I would say working with them was also a great learning experience. I learned a lot working with the publisher. I improved my game a lot over the time I worked with them, and it was a great learning experience.
Okay, and so starting the moment you start working with them, you improving your game, you experimenting a new experience. So you learn, you get insights. When they started to publish the game, did you help on the distribution, the marketing, or they manage everything? And after this, you have like some traction. What was the result of this game?
Back in the day, I would say this publisher, obviously they did help with the game feedbacks and localization, but we did not really do a lot of marketing. I would say, like for example, we did not do any paid user acquisition, we did not do any ASO, etc. One thing that the publisher was able to do was, I think they were able to get Apple features. If they build good games, they had connections, or their account was basically in a good standing because some of the past games were featured. The games that I published were also featured. Obviously, it's not a guarantee that every game that they publish will get featured, but if the game is good, there was a high chance that it would get featured. So the first game that I built was featured on a lot of countries. I think worldwide on Apple Play Store. We even had a graphic feature in USA on the front page banner on Apple Play Store. Back in the day, getting featured on Apple Play Store would get you a couple 100,000 downloads, which was pretty good. Nowadays, if you get featured, you would barely get like 10,000, 50,000 downloads. But back then, you would get 100, 200, 300,000 downloads, which was pretty good for me. That's how I made my initial decent amount of money building games, and that made me believe, okay, doing this could help me make money in the future.
And what was the business model of this game? There's like a premium version and you take like a percentage of this. How you earn money with this game?
It was a fully free game. It was completely free game. We earned money via ads.
And do you recommend like this kind of game with ads model? Is it still working? Because I hear that it's more and more difficult to have like a viable business with this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's why I hesitated before answering it. If it was like 2 years ago, I would say yes. But now the problem is the margins are reducing more and more. So the LTV is not increasing because the ECPs are not increasing, but the CPI is going up. So the margins are very low, but it could be profitable. It depends on your scale, right? If you want to make $1 million, yeah, it's going to be difficult. If you want to make a couple $1,000, maybe $100,000, it is still possible. It's difficult now compared to how it was back in the day. It's definitely difficult.
And still at this moment, you were still working completely alone, or you started like working with other people, employers, maybe co-founders, etc.?
No, I was working alone.
Okay, so what is the next step after you have this first game that started to be featured? You quit your job. What is the new adventure?
So I continued doing this. First game was published, it was featured worldwide. I did not quit my job because I did make money, but it was not like life-changing money. I think I made $5,000, $10,000 around that mark. It was good money, but it was not life-changing money. So what I did was I continued my job and I continued building more and more games. I published my second game. Even that was published, don't think in all the countries, but it was featured in a lot of countries. Again, that game did similar numbers, slightly better than the last one. It did more revenue, more profits. I published one more game with them, which was my third game. That was featured as well. Again, the same thing. Same amount of money, same amount of downloads, nothing too crazy, nothing too special. But after my third game, the same thing I felt during my school days. I was not able to focus full time on my own business. I felt I was at a point where I saw everything that company had to offer to me. I saw how teams work. I saw how their structure was, etc. So I decided to leave that company in 2017 November, and I published my fourth game in March 2018. This was a game published with Kachaf and that Canadian publisher. So it was in partnership with those two and me. I built the game, Canadian publisher, and I worked together on that game to improving it further. And then we published that game, French publisher called Kachaf, which was acquired by Ubisoft at that point, I think. That game did amazingly well. That game did like $100,000, I believe, in 3 or 4 months. Just my share of profit, and I was ecstatic. To me, I felt like, okay, I found the way, and I knew that I just had to do this, and that's what I decided to do. So I left the company, I published this game, and as soon as I saw the profits coming in, I decided to just go all in, and I started building similar games. When I say similar games, I mean in that genre, like ad-based, free, very snackable, casual, like hyper-casual games, and I continued that day and night.
Okay, so you found your receipts and you were duplicating to create compound effect, or just like because you were mastering this kind of game and it was more easy to the second one than the first one, the third one than the second one, and it was like a virtuous circle, right? Did you ever try to publish game alone, or do you ever try with publisher? Because I don't know exactly how the game economy work, and if there's a lot of people who are developing the game and who are distributing the game. Did you try it or no?
Till then, no. Even now, I haven't really tried publishing the game. The main reason for that being is it takes tremendous amount of upfront capital. It needs a lot of money to really put the game out there, especially if you're trying to make big amount of money. Obviously, you can start small and then you can start scaling, etc. I haven't personally done that yet. I do plan on dipping my toes in publishing pretty soon, but I haven't done that personally yet.
I think at some point it's maybe not another job, but it's another job that you can learn at some point when you grow and when you started to have like teams, etc. But it's very cool that you started being focused on where you were good at and what works.
That's a very good point. Even the publishers, right? Super big publishers, they're really, really good in publishing games. For example, there are a lot of very big French publishers, Homa Games, Voodoo. These publishers are massive. They make a lot of money, but if you look at their model, they work with external developers a lot. Now they do develop in-house as well. But when they were starting out, they had a lot of external partners. So the development was done by someone else while they were focusing on their own course.
Exactly, distribution.
So that's the same with studios as well. There are some massive studios which publish game every quarter, and those games do very, very well, but they don't do the publishing themselves. Now there are some very big studios as well which are dipping their toes in publishing and have started self-publishing, but now they're at a point where they can afford taking that risk. They have more resources, they have more capabilities of doing that.
In most of the case, they buy after the talents, they make some acquisition, etc. And you don't have to think that you have to develop everything from scratch right now. Like start small, grow, learn, experience, become good on a specific point and duplicate, And at this point, like at what time you decided to start hiring people, etc.? It was like this moment or maybe later in your journey?
It was a bit more. It was after like 2 years, I believe. I published my biggest game back then, 18. And after that, I continued building just games. I would just do 3 things: eat, work, sleep, repeat. To a point where when the lockdowns happened, right, in 2020, I did not feel any change in my day-to-day life. Going out was not in my dictionary. I would just wake up, go in my room, start working. When I feel hungry, I would just go eat my food, come back, work, and then I would work till my eyes would like start shutting because I would get so tired. When I would sleep for 10-12 hours, and then I will wake up once I'm recharged and I will start working again. So I did this for I think 1.5 years. I published my first biggest hyper-casual game in March 2018. I worked for 1.5 years, and I was able to publish my second like massive hyper-casual game in December of 2019, and this was again with a French publisher called Tap Nation, and the game was called Ice Cream Inc. We published that game in December 2019. That game went #1 in multiple countries in January 2020. That game is still doing very, very well till this date, and it's a very simple game just about making ice cream, and that game brought in huge amount of cash flow to a point where I was very comfortable in hiring more people now. The main reason why I did not really start hiring people early on was I basically wanted to have that safety net. I can comfortably hire people and keep them on the payroll. I did not want to just hire people and then as soon as the money runs dry, just fire them or let them go. I wanted to have enough money in the bank that even if I don't publish a game for a year, 2 year, 3 year, I can still sustain the company. I can still run the company safely, and I don't have to fire my employees. That was the main factor which made me hold myself back from hiring very early on. But once I published Ice Cream Inc., I had no excuse. I had within like 3-4 months I had money to run the company for the 2-3 years without earning again. So that's what I did. So we actually planned on opening the office in March 2020, but then lockdowns happened. We actually had booked the co-working space and whatnot, but then we actually ended up canceling all of those plans. But we still went ahead with hiring. We started completely remotely. We hired 3-4 people, and then we just started building more and more prototypes.
And at this time, you were solo founder too, or you find your other co-founders during this time?
No, I was solo. I'm solo till this date. I'm the only founder.
And so you incorporated the company in 2020 in India at this point?
No. Actually, I incorporated the company in 2017 itself when I was working solo, but I did not hire anybody. I was just single person company, and then I started hiring people in 2020 March.
Okay, and the company is based in India, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and starting the moment, like you starting hiring people, maybe like having more responsibility at some point because you have now humans to manage. How it changed your dynamics by being solo founder, pretty flexible, as being like a manager of people at some point,
That's a very good question. The transition was very, very difficult for me because initially I was not seeing from other person's lens. To me, when my employees, for example, I gave a task to my employee, they would say, okay, this will take 5 days. In my head, I would think, okay, I can just finish this in 1 or 2 days. Why do you need 5 days? I was missing the point that I was working 24/7 on this thing, and they are only going to work maybe 8-9 hours a day on this thing, taking this factor into account. And also at the end of the day, it's my own company, so I have different bond and relationship with the company. So it took me a while to realize that. Also another thing was, initially I was very hands-on. What I mean by that is, to a point where I feel like I was maybe micromanaging everyone. So I would give a task, and then they would do something throughout the week, and then I would review everything over the weekend, and I would say, okay, this is wrong, and this is me doing with myself. So I would just sit on Saturday evening or Friday evening, I would review everything. I would see, okay, these things are wrong. If I give this feedback on Monday, I'm wasting 2 days, and then maybe the developer will take another 3-4 days to fix all of this. So what I've done a couple of times initially was, I would completely discard everything. I'll just delete everything, and then I would recode everything over the weekend, and then on Monday I would have a chat with the developer. Look, so I was missing one point, which was I was being maybe a bit too aggressive, but my intent was to explain the developer where they went wrong. Maybe I could have done this in a better way, but I really wanted to show them, instead of just saying, okay, do this, do it like this, I wanted to show them how it could have been done and how much time you could have saved. So that was my way of maybe training them or explaining them in a better way and more easiest and fastest way. So I would do that, and then on Monday I would have a chat with them. Look, you did this, it could have been done in this way, we could have saved some time, etc. And eventually that did kind of help. So my initial developers, they improved a lot very, very quickly doing this method, even though it was very taxing for me because I was working day and night overseeing them, and on the weekends I was redoing multiple projects myself. But eventually the initial, the core team became very strong. Now I have put myself in the back foot, right? Like I don't do that like I used to do in the day. Now I just oversee stuff. I don't even oversee day-to-day activities. I just see on the weekly basis what's going on, everything is going well or not. Now the team is very competent,
more independent also. I think this is very challenging when you used to work alone and you have high expectation and very high commitment from your side. You will never get this from anyone, so it's very difficult. Even for co-founders, when you find and get co-founders, it's very difficult to always be in the same type of balance. I like to say that it's like a couple at some point. You have 100% of percentage of commitment, and sometimes you're going to do 50-50 with your partner, with your business partner. Sometimes it's going to be 40-60, and even with co-founders, it's difficult. So for employers, I can definitely relate it that some of our founders from the Quest were a bit frustrated to see that, okay, the team wasn't good enough and wasn't going faster, etc. And it's about finding the right balance, because at some point you have to show them that you could do this, and it's just not about critiquing and bullshitting the work. You have to show, and you have to earn trust, and you have to earn respect from the people of your team. But at some point it's not healthy, and it's not working. It's not valuable to do it every weekend, the job that it's supposed to do, and just have to relax on this. And I can definitely relate it, so it makes sense.
And there's a book called E-Myth Revisited. So I have this very good friend of mine. He recommended this book. It's called E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. This book really helped me understanding what I was doing wrong, because this exactly pinpoints the problems that I was facing and how I could solve it. And it was a great read. I would definitely recommend people who are facing similar issues giving this book a read.
Okay, and so you started growing the company, starting getting more people, you starting publishing maybe more games. What happened after Ice Cream Game and the success?
So after Ice Creaming, I started hiring people. The main reason for hiring people was to increasing the capacity. So the thing is, we build the prototypes, then we soft launch them, we see the game KPIs, what's the retention of the game, what's the playtime of the game, what's the CPI of the game. We check all these metrics. If they look good, that's when we decide to iterate on the game. If they look not so good, we decide to just kill the game and move forward. A game of numbers. You can develop 100 prototypes and maybe one will work out of that. That's what I did from 2018 till 2019. I built 150 games and one of them was Ice Creaming. So now the plan was to have more developers on the team so I could build those 100 games faster and then find the winning concept faster. So that's what we did. Initially, I hired only developers. Not the best decision, I realized afterwards, but I only hired developers. And then we started building, instead of just 1 or 2 games a month, we started building 5 or 8 games a month. And we were building these prototypes, we were testing them, and it took us 3 years. So I published my game in December 2019, and then it took me 2020, 2021, and then 2022. I published my another game in the end of December 2022, which was Attack Hole. And during this period, obviously, we did go very close to publishing a couple of games, I would say 3 times. Some games performed really well in the soft launch phase, but then they were not that profitable once we did global launch. And when you're working with a publisher, a lot of things, right? Even if the game is profitable, they look for a certain margin because they also deploy their teams who will be responsible for distribution, marketing, etc. So it has to have certain amount of margin. Even if the game is profitable, it could make maybe $10,000, $50,000 a month. That might not work for the publisher. So they will say, no, we don't publish this game. So that happened quite a few times with us. I think twice. Yeah, it happened twice in the period of like 2 years. And then the third game that went in soft launch was Attack Hole, and we were able to publish this game December 2022, and that game became the most downloaded game of 2023 quarter 1, and it's doing very well now.
Okay, and what is this kind of game? What is the concept?
It's a hyper casual game. It's also very it's a free game. It's a mobile game. It's ad driven game.
Okay, interesting. And like it was like it's so popular during the first quarter. What is the life after like the launch of this kind of game? It's still used by people. It's used still download, or it's going like 2 years after, you know?
When I say hyper casual game, these kind of games are very like short lived. Usually, the lifespan is very short. So once you publish them, for the first few months you make a lot of money, and then they eventually die out. After like 5-6 months, a lot of games they make negligible profits. Fortunately for me, the games that I have published are still doing well. For example, Ice Cream Inc. If you check that game out, it's a very simple game, but it's 4+ years and it's still making a lot of money. I would even argue it's making more money than any other hyper casual game. If it was published today, in the first month, the amount of money that would make, Ice Cream Inc. still makes that even after 4 years. So Ice Cream Inc. is definitely an outlier. Attack Hole, on the other hand, it's still doing well. It's definitely very less compared to the initial months, but it's still doing well.
And do you think you could like duplicate ice creaming on all the niche or on all the vertical, or do you think like it's difficult after you have one concept?
I think the games it's kind of difficult, especially if it's an ad-driven game, because these kind of games have low retention, solely rely on the marketability of the game. As the ice creaming concept, the ice creaming so satisfying and so marketable, that game is doing well. Building an ice creaming is doing so well. Let's do maybe building a cake or building a muffin, but that doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's why I am asking, because you tell me like this concept is crazy. Okay, you did the ice cream, let's go like the freeze, let's go
we tried it. Didn't work out that.
Like you tried, okay. And right now, like your main focus is about like creating other new game to have like maybe between 51 game that can be a hit, and it's always like trying to find new things. What is your process regarding like the soft launch and the public launch? You mentioned it. How it works to test if a game can be a hit or not?
So I think there are a couple of questions in the question that you asked. What I will do is I will answer the soft launch and the public launch, and then I will answer what kind of games we are building now. It's a general thing for all kinds of games. I'll just address this. In soft launch, we mainly look for playtime, retention, CPI of the game. So these are like very, very core KPIs that we look for. The main reason we do a soft launch is to acquire unbiased users, because if we ask our team members, if we ask our family members, they'll always say, okay, this game feels nice, this is good. They won't really give you unbiased feedback, but we want that unbiased feedback. So that's why we launched the game in USA. USA is one of our main markets. We launched the game in USA, and we acquire some users over the period of 3 or 4 days, and we see how they interact with the game for a period of 1 week. What's the day 0 play time, what's the day 1 retention, what's the day 3 retention, what's the day 7 retention, and how much money did we spend on acquiring each and every user. At the end of that, we see, based on all the tests that the publishers have done in the past, all the tests that I have done in the past, if we see any potential in this game, if day 1 retention is 20%, do we think can we bring this up to 40% or not, based on all our experience from the past. So this is where the experience comes into the play, and based on that we make the call, okay, let's do another version of this game, let's improve this game and test again, or should we just kill the game and move on with some other idea. So this is the answer for that. If the game does well, it does well in the soft launch phase, the retention, the KPI, the playtime, the CPI, all of these are good. That's when we say, okay, let's add monetization as well. Initial KPIs are without monetization, so we can have the core benchmark, and then once we add the monetization, once we add ads in our purchase, we check again whether these things on these new additions are causing any effect on the game KPIs or not. Sometimes adding ads reduces the retention, reduces the playtime, etc. So we do this check, and then we check if it's still profitable, if it's if the game LTV, or the money that we generate from per user, is more than how much we are spending to acquire that user. If that's the case, then we go in global launch. This is where the expertise of the publisher publisher really kicks in. They handle the campaigns, they launch the game in multiple countries, then they start scaling the game. So this is the journey from soft launch.
When you launch a game on one market and another, do you change like the branding and all the stuff related to the game presentation to adapt to a different culture, or is it the same brand, the same description, the same type of thing?
Mostly yes. For hyper casual games, it's mostly the same. We do localization, so the in-game text is localized, but in hyper casual games, there is barely any text for the most part. In hyper casual games, the idea itself is to build a game that is so intuitive and understandable that the player first of all understands the game within the 5 seconds of the ad that they see. And second point is we make the game so intuitive that the player just understands how to play the game on their own. They don't even need an onboarding. They don't even need a tutorial for that. So by default, the game has very less text. But whatever text we have, we localize that. We do ASO, so we localize all the text on the App Store as well. So we do those localizations, but we don't really do country-specific content.
Okay, and yeah, my other question was about like what you're building right now.
Like we initially discussed, right? The margins and just ad-based games are not that great. They're not doing very, very well now. So the idea is to move towards games, casual games, hybrid casual games, which can be monetized via in-app purchases and not just rely on ads. So that's our main goal now. Mainly we are focusing on puzzle games like Candy Crush, Collect Them All, Mob Control by Voodoo. These are some of the great examples, benchmarks of hybrid casual games, hybrid puzzle games. And these are the type of games that we are mainly focusing on right now.
Okay, and what is your process regarding like benchmark, ideas, process you build, you ship lights, what version maybe an MVP, you test, what is the process like from the start?
Okay, so we, because we work with these big publishers, right, the main benefit of them is the amount of data that they have. And the idea is to leverage that data as much as we can because they have access to so many different studios and they're testing hundreds of games every month. They have certain insights that I as a studio cannot have. Even doesn't matter how good I am, how capable we are in execution, we just don't know what things work, what things don't work. Because they test like hundreds of games, they know what are the similarities amongst the games that perform well versus the games that don't perform well. So we just leverage that. So based on that, we have built like a guideline, for example, right, where best performing games have certain features or certain commonalities between them, amongst them. And when we sit down during the brainstorming session, we have a brainstorming session every Wednesday in the company where everyone is involved. Even that if it's an HR person or QA person, they can come in and they can pitch their ideas. If they found something cool online, they can pitch that as well. And the game designers take that into the account and then try to give them valuable feedback, think game ideas around those concepts, etc. So we sit down with the checklist of the features that we think are common in all the hit games, and then whenever we come up with a concept, we try to make sure that it aligns with the checklist that we have. Once we do that, once we have the concept, we make a GDD out of it, which is a game design document. We try to do all the details about the game, and then once we have the document to the publisher, these are some of the ideas we have brainstormed. What do you think about that? Because sometimes there are like so many new games coming out daily. Publishers have already tested the ideas with someone else. So building those kind of games is kind of useless because if we are testing the same game, it makes no sense. Maybe that game did not perform well. So if the publisher says, okay, we have tested this game, it did not perform well, that insight will save us time. If we are not building things which is not going to work. So we share the idea with them. We check if they have tested a similar game or not, what they think about the concept based on the market insights that they have, the trends that they see, etc. And once they share that, we then decide, okay, to move ahead with the concept or not. Move forward with the concept, we sit down in the team and then we do a timeline where we discuss who will be involved in the process, which developers will be building the game. The project manager sits down with the developers, they break down the game in like small tasks, and then we discuss how long each task will take. Same thing with the art team. We have an art director in the company. He sits down with the artists, he breaks down all the elements that are required for the game, and then we build a timeline and the team starts working on the project. We share frequent updates with the publisher as well. For example, once the game is done 50%, we share the update with the publisher, see what they think. Maybe they have an insight of something that we could improve. Maybe they have a feedback that we could improve. So we share the progress with them as well. And once the first version of the game is ready, the same like we explained earlier, soft launching it. If it performs well, then we do the public launch, global launch. Doesn't do well, we kill it, and then we start with a new concept.
Okay, and you work with several publishers, right? And it's every time the same. You're not like chasing any new partnership, any new publishers. You work with the same. You have a trusting relationship, right?
Yeah, in the beginning, I would work with multiple publishers. The main reason for that being is I wanted to work with as many publishers as possible so I can find out the best possible publisher to see where we synergize the best. And because I work with almost all the publishers now, I know which publishers better, which publishers are we able to synergize well, etc. So now we have certain publishers that we collaborate with. We don't run behind like different publishers with every game.
Yeah, of course. But when you launch a game, you do like exclusive deals. So you work only with one publisher, right?
Yeah, we pitch an idea to a publisher, then we only work with that publisher on that specific game, because it's more about trust, and because they're also spending their time giving us the feedback on that game.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
So you pitch your game only to one publisher at some point, and you choose the one that can understand better your game and that can help better, right? I was wondering, like during like your journey to build this, definitely the lockdown and the COVID stuff, but after, did you travel outside India? Did you meet people that you probably met online? Did you experiment like physical activity after this period of COVID, or are you still working from India and feel good about it and want to stay here?
So initially we did start remotely, but then we did open the office 2022. We opened the office in Mumbai, Thane in 2022. So now we called all the team members to work on site. So no one is working remotely anymore. We do have some employees which are from different countries, so they work remotely. For example, our art team is from Indonesia. There's a developer who works from Turkey. There's a developer who works from Libya. But majority of our team works from the office in Thane. Other than that, I haven't really went out to a lot of like gaming expos or gaming events. I don't know. I just did not really see a lot of value in going to events just for networking, because I can always reach out to everyone on LinkedIn and then connect with them. These things have like virtual meetings. I don't know. Maybe it's time to try and see if it can change my perspective.
No, I think like everyone have their own system and their own path, but I think like it's one subject that is pretty interesting, and that a lot of Dropouts told me that, for example, part of the experience was about like experimenting like new culture, traveling, meeting new people. For you, it was, for example, being a part of a company to learn about their structural process during a few months, and after get out to lunch and with all the baggage you learn. So I think everyone have their own path and their own way to learn after they decided to drop out. And I was wondering like if they travel or no, and if it was helping for you. But I think no, and that's not a bad thing, you know. At some point, like everyone have their own system. But I think when you get out of like this education and this structure that provide the education, it's challenging to find your productive zone, to find your own structure, and also to discover that the world is chaotic at some point. So it's okay if it's chaotic, and you don't have to be afraid of the chaos, you know. Also, I wanted to ask you, like, how did you manage to continuing your routine when you drop out and continuing learning and getting maybe some knowledge outside of like the school that, and outside maybe what you learn online, you know? How did you learn after living like institutional places, you know?
I learned everything on Google, basically. So once I dropped out of school, I learned everything on Google. And like I said, once I joined these like forums and websites, I could just ping anyone. For example, if I saw someone building a tool and they were doing really well, I would just ping them and ask them specific questions. I never really asked, how did you build this tool? I would always try building that myself. And when I get stuck on a specific issue, I would ask that specific problem. For example, if I want to build a tool, I won't just say, yeah, how did you build this tool? I would ask a much more specific question, maybe just single task. And then I would get the answer from them, and then I will apply that and I will continue building. If I get stuck again, I will maybe ask someone else. So I did that. I think Googling works really, really well. Everything is on Google and YouTube, as long as you can break down the tasks. If you really go down to specific tasks, you can find the answers online rather than just like trying to search for like very broad terms like how to make money, etc.
You were going like pretty deep on your subject, and so at this point it was pretty easy for you. Okay, very, very interesting. Like, and if you could like say something like a learning, an advice, an insight to somebody here who's listening, who are like thinking of or already drop out to pursue like their conviction, that passion, what helps you like growing up and making it after this moment you drop out? What can you recommend and what you can share to other people who can be like in your position, you know?
I think giving an advice or recommendation is a bit difficult. I can share my experience. From my perspective, I think having that inbuilt thinking process of if I need something, I need to do something in return really helped. I never took things for granted, and I never really thought too much, right? If you think too much, you're not able to do things. I never really did that. I won't think, I would just do. So if I want to build games, I just did that. At least find something that you want to do. For example, if you want to build a company, if you want to build a game, it's very important to first figure out like how do you want to do it. For example, someone is interested in building an AI software or whatnot. My recommendation would be, do not focus on how you are going to make like first dollar out of your software or how you're going to monetize it. Just start building it. Make sure that you are capable, you're competent, you can build something that works, and eventually doors will start opening up. And that's all I did. In the beginning, I was just building softwares for free, and I was just giving them for free. And then one of these Flash forums came up to me and said, hey, look, you're building all these softwares for all these games. I want a software for this specific game. If you build me that software, I would pay you 50 euros. And that's how it started. That's how I had my client, and that's how it started. When I started building my games, I pitched to multiple publishers. First game, nobody liked it. Continued building the games. I did not even know how much money I would make out of a game. I did not know going to sell it upright, if I was going to publish a game with the publisher. I did not even know how publishers published games. I just knew publishers did something for the game and that made money. So I just built my own games. I pitched them, and obviously this might not be the best way. First few deals can be very shitty, can be a bit exploitative. Maybe the publisher will take advantage of you. Once you do a deal once or twice, you will have more understanding, more learnings, and then you can apply your brain and then try to negotiate and have better deals. Obviously, if I have a mentor, that would be useful, but I never really had that. I just figured out everything on my own just by doing it and figuring things on the way.
Yeah, very good insight. I think you have to do like step by step the thing and chasing like experience and making things, like don't chasing like the result, don't chasing the money, don't chasing the status, don't chasing like the lifestyle, just making it and seeing like how it will come and where it will bring you. Love this discussion with you, mate. It was very a pleasure to get you on this podcast. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Ciao, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Julian, and it was great chatting to you.
Thank you.